monitoring well at the highest point on that little lot, or is it?
It pretty much
Lower.
is. The previous owners haven't been friendly to that land. They've done a lot of, I don't know what they pushed around or didn't do in there. You could see all those trails coming through in there. It's not like they haven't had equipment in there and cutting around here and doing different things, but it's
I would have to say we picked the highest area that was
on the whole lot.
significant enough to put a drain field on and a home. Ed wanted to be down where water would run on the land on a typical year, then I advised against it. And shot quite a few elevations out there in the highest area and thought, boy, I think we might have a spot here that would work. It's not down where he wanted to be, but
So somebody could just make a motion to deny or just have me not accept, directly not to accept the groundwater monitoring for this year because it was a very
Absolutely.
unique year. Or we can do a little brainstorm and think of something we could offer. I'm was almost gonna invite Marcia down. The owner right here, his name is Merlin Heights. And he wanted this other 22 acres in the worst way, and I mean, he really wanted it. And he told me, he said, well, nobody will ever be able to build on that. And I said, well, they'd have to do a letter of map revision, and I kept stating that to him. And he says, well, and he tried for almost a year and something to get that piece of property, and then just it shows up, and here's a transfer, and Ed Green has it and stuff, so at least I wanna be as careful as I can before I make some final decision about that piece of property, because I think you're gonna have somebody that's gonna be very willing to look into it. Not that that's gonna, you know, I just wanna have a basis that we've covered the right steps, and I think this is the right step to come to the board and say, look, was it a year as usual and stuff, so do that. So the real question is, are we gonna expect a more typical runoff next year with a more extended flow and higher flow and see that in May and wait and monitor it again, or work with the site the way it is and see what Mr. Green might wanna.
what if we put in a pressure dose system and did a shallow cap sand mound and kept the laterals at the elevation of the natural ground there, instead of putting them 24 inches deep?
That's the best case scenario that you could get out of it, but that's gonna presume that we're gonna have a, 48-inch separation, which, what if we remonitor in the future and it comes out to be less than that?
I think this year has been really low all year, we just haven't had the runoff.
Well, I know, I guess I was surprised that river, that the St. Regis River ever had 30,000 CFS at all.
Oh, was it, kept saying 3,000.
Three.
Oh.
30,000.
No, it's 3.
No, it's 3,000.
Okay.
It's 3,000. Yeah, no, it just, and I mean, it literally came up in
Yeah.
the shortest period of time, in like 2 days it came up and it was
Then it was done.
Done.
it was gone.
Is there any current regulation right now that would prohibit his request of putting in a septic system currently? So you're looking at kind of a precaution, but there's nothing current that would prohibit it.
Well, the state minimum standards that are brought forth by the state say that if you do groundwater monitoring, that the monitoring must reflect a typical year for, seasonal flows and do that. It's a basis in state regulation to do that. But the state could never be involved with that. They always have to rely on the local sanitary to put that together, so. that's the difficulty in it.
Seeing what we have on this, with the floodplain study we did, the lowest elevation where the proposed drain field is at is 3.5 feet above the 100-year floodplain. So even if you had a 100-year flood, you'd be 3.5 feet above it if it came through the ground at that exact elevation.
But if
The
you.
building site is closer to the river, and it's actually a little bit higher than the drain field site. It's 4.36 feet above the 100-year, but we wanted to put the drain field back as far as we could from the river on the property.
So are we acting on something here, Tim? I mean, I don't see that as a. or
Well,
we just-
I-
You're looking for
I'm just-
guidance,
Sorry,
or-
sorry, I'm not looking for guidance, I'm just wondering if the Board of Health has an opinion that we should not accept water monitoring for this year, on this site, so. You know, if you agree with that, that's the safer premise to have, is that we should just accept the groundwater monitoring because of such an unusual runoff year, that we're not gonna accept it. The board objects.
How do you determine, I mean, though, non-typical, what, this could be a trend that's, you know, if you listen to everything that they're talking now, what if next year is the same?
You know,
What
that-
makes it typical then, I
Well,
guess?
I think what makes it typical is that because of those other projects that when I've been up there, is that we've monitored this water very, you know, accurately or concerned about it because of being in Coker there and, that other project. And so I've actually watched when that water comes up and goes down, and in the last 3 years, I just absolutely know that peak of that 3,000 CFS has been just about in the middle of May for the last 3 years. So I guess from history, I'm saying, yeah, this was not normal at all. If it had come up to 3,000 feet and stayed there for a week and a half, and had time to probably saturate those areas in soils and things like that, I could have been a lot more comfortable with it. Maybe it just happened earlier, I don't have a problem with that. What I happened with is that the peak went in just a matter of days, and I don't think I had enough time to saturate the soils, or, you know, really tell you what the true water table's gonna be, so.
We get really involved in watching the river and levels and different flows. And just Tuesday night, we were at a meeting that had a USGS hydrologist for this area. And he was saying this year is a very unusual year, it's very dry. The runoffs didn't happen when they should have, nor did they have the duration or the height that they have. And so, I mean, USGS is thinking this is really a very different year than we've had in the past. Because even the Clark Fork just peaked and it was only 15,000, which is nothing, but it.
Yeah, there wasn't much, not that.
Wasn't much there. So if that helps you, Tim,
Well, it does. I mean, I think what I would like for the board is that you've heard what I've presented on this, and that we should just accept this groundwater monitoring data on face value. Now, if he wants to come in and put in, like Ron said, if he wants to put in an elevated pressure dose system and everything else like that, I've got some comfort factor with that. I just don't have a comfort factor with saying you could go out there and get yourself a standard system that is 2 feet into the ground, when, you know, we just don't know if that water table is gonna come up and be, if there's gonna maintain a 4-foot separation, so. But, I mean, that's still, in essence, we're not accepting this particular groundwater monitoring, we're just gonna see, you know, see if that's, something that and sounds like he's fairly agreeable to, is to put that type of system in, or are you throwing that out? I don't know if you've talked to Ed or not.
I think he would do that if he could get, to expedite things a little bit. It would be worth it to him.
So otherwise,
You're
what, we'd have.
probably
to wait-
looking at double the cost to put it
Otherwise, you'd have to wait another year for
Yep.
a normal groundwater.
through June of next year.
If next year's normal, I mean, though, you know,
Yeah.
you could be looking at the same thing, that's what I'm saying.
Or you
How,
could be
what
looking at a wet
determines
year.
typical,
Yeah.
non-typical? What if we're on a 10-year trend right now that, you know, it's gonna be a drought for the next 10 years, or we don't know, I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
God.
But, you know, if this same identical monitoring came out next year, then, okay. I guess that's the new norm or something.
Yeah, that's how do you, yeah.
But if he wants to expedite things, the extra cost of that,
And that would be his option. Either
Yeah.
wait till next June, or you put an elevated sand mound in and
Yeah.
keep the laterals at the
Mhm.
elevation of the natural ground that's there.
Mhm.
Cause that, according to the floodplain stuff we had, that puts it at approximately 4 feet above the 100-year floodplain. So that gives you your separation there. And that's just as certain as, that's all the more certain we can get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you don't
It
know.
is, I agree with him, this was not a typical year, and it makes a huge difference. A couple years ago at Plains, the river came up and it was probably 6 feet lower than it was the year before, but it stayed up for 2 to 3 weeks. And we had groundwater where you had never seen
Never
it
seen it,
before,
yeah.
because that allowed that water to seep in through the ground, which takes time.
more of a saturation.
So are you looking for some kind of motion or anything, or just agreement here, is it?
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd situation, because
Yeah.
it doesn't really require that we come to the Board of Health and ask for a variance, because I have documentation that says we're putting it outside of the 100-year floodplain. But that groundwater monitoring is definitely reasonable, and that's why we put the tubes in last year. We would have hoped for a normal year this year, so.
Yeah.
Well, I think just a quick motion that, you know, that the board concurs with the information presented and that not accepting, the groundwater monitoring for the Ed Green location, in the, you know, as typical monitoring results. And then, you know, from there it would be just explore the options of whether he wants to elevate something or monitor next year, so. I don't
We
know how you
have that
make that
motion?
into a nice little quick motion, so.
Okay, Peggy has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Okay, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to, accept that this was not a typical year for the groundwater monitoring results. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay,
Carried.
thank you for that, I just, it was not gonna be easy to do that. The other thing I have for you is that I have drafted a set of, wastewater treatment disposal system regulations for the county. If you could tell me the date of our old one, I'd give you a lot of credit. It's somewhere in the 80s, 90s, something that came out. I don't know that it's ever significantly changed. There's been several drafts in there, so. What has transpired since this is there's been at least 3 revisions of the minimum on-site standards for the state. We're obligated to follow what's a part of the subdivision regulations. It's called subchapter 9, but that sets forth the minimum standards for the how the counties need to operate across the state. This document incorporates a good share of those. If there's a interesting situation with the state, which our current regulations are so vague on that don't help us out at all, is it's called a variance or appeals for, you know, this you can appeal to the Board of Health, but if the Board of Health was to deny some particular situation with the standards, then that that decision can be appealed to the Department of Environmental Quality. The DEQ dearly does not like to see that, until they really change the law. There's no real way to get out of that, but this particular document has the best protocol, or the current protocol for doing those orders and stuff. It also has some cease and desist and some other things that are so vague in our current rules and stuff. The standards for installing a septic system are really what's in a document from the state called Circular DEQ 3, and this adopts the current version of that by reference, and that's typically been done. Our old documents, that was the only modification other than the fees that I could see, is that they adopted a more current version of DEQ 4. So anyway, I've threatened to do this for a long time, I guess. Is that threatened or stated I would? I put together a fee schedule on a separate page in there. My understanding is, and hopefully maybe Marcia can tell me, that you can alter a set of regulations and alter the fee schedule without having to hear the whole set of regulations if you reference them as a separate portion of the regulations. I don't know whether that's all that valid or not, but anyway, I put this on there. So basically it's out there. It's for you to, if you have time, want to, desire to take a look at. We've tried to, I don't know, from our old regulations, and we got 3 times as many definitions as, so there's a whole lot of definitions out there that people have been using that were never part of our regulations, so that was one part of this, of increasing the definitions to 50-some, 56 of them now, where that was not the case before. So what I'm looking for today, though, is that if you think that, you know, either 2 things, we could sit here and just keep this as a board action for the next Board of Health meeting, or we could proceed with what would be the basic of the next step, is to put this out for public content and put it on the webpage and let people know that it's out there being proposed. I'm of the mindset I'd like to get it out there and get it published, because we may have few of the contractors around here. There's this Darren Haskins character, he's on my case all the time about having a licensed contractor section in here. I'm sorry, because I drafted these till late in the night. I can't tell you where it is.
I just sent them somewhere.
But there's a licensed contractor section in here. I could see that maybe getting some changes and tweaks in there. The difficulty that I have about licensed contractors is that I have a small core of people that put in systems. They do good jobs. I don't see a lot of people, but that I have literally 3 counties around me that all have a licensed contractor program, and they occasionally, those people come into here. They ask me, well, do I have to get licensed in your county to operate? Because if a contractor from Mineral County goes to Sanders County, he has to take the contractor's licensing and license him over there. And so, in essence, most of my contractors have been licensed in a different county, so I just have kind of declined to ever do that, because they were basically getting hit from being, some of them are licensed in 3 counties, not necessarily Lake, but at least Missoula and Sanders, and so they're carrying 2 different licenses. I don't know what Missoula's is. It's probably $100 and some, and Sanders is $70, $80 a day and stuff. So, but then again, it's a idea and a concept that if you're serious enough, you want to put septic systems in, then show some basic knowledge and about the process of putting them in there. So anyway, it's in there. So the only thing I would look for from the board is that if you agree with my sentiment about this, is that I could put it out there for public comment, and we would take it up at a subsequent board meeting.
But when the public reads this, Tim, what are the substantial changes from the previous one? I mean, is there?
There's gonna be some substantial changes. The one thing is that if you connect to an existing sewer system and change it or alter it without getting a permit, you're gonna get whacked now. So, and I have to do a little tweaking in here because you have to be practical about Mineral County. Mineral County did not issue septic system permits before the eighties, and they started a few out of Missoula County with Missoula County in the early eighties, and then the mid-eighties, you get a pretty good job. But you're always gonna come across some septic systems without a permit to back them up and stuff, so what do you do with those, how do you handle it and stuff? But we get a number of, what we get is that we get unpermitted septic systems in some of these locations, that somebody comes in and says, well, hey, there's a septic system there, and I can connect to it, and our current regulations say, yeah, I guess we can. So we have no mechanism to say that you need to take out a permit to connect to any existing sewer system. This would correct that. And that would probably be one of the more significant. As far as the standards in installing septic systems, I've used the standards that these are basically based on. I was the one that wrote quite a few of those for the state. I drafted up big portions of DEQ4 when I worked for it, so. We all use that, that's not a real change, so. Licensing contractors and being a little more, tracking about these septic systems and doing that, so that's gonna be the two things that we pretty much change, so.
So how long would it be out for public comment?
Well, at least till the next, Board of Health meeting, which we have quarterly, so we're gonna pick one up in July, August, September, sometime there would be a meeting in there. If there was a lot of comment about it, I suppose that we could have a Board of Health meeting and consider these and let the public come in and talk about them and stuff, so. And deviating from business is a little usual in here. This is really a function of the Board of Health. In the past, the commissioners have just adopted these. But, from what I could tell, but somebody could tell me different, so.
So do we have a motion to put this Mineral County wastewater treatment and disposal system regulations out for public comment until our next health board meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to put these out for public review. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
It would really be nice if there was kind of a summary of the bullets. These are the
Things to do
substantial
that.
changes
Yeah.
from the previous. And so when the public looks at this, they kind of know, okay, we got a 12-page document here, you know, how do I digest this? You know,
That's a good suggestion, that,
Yeah.
just make a companion sheet to go with it.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, do that. Publish that on the web too, so that people can see that. My intention is to try to get a couple articles in the paper and let people know that it's
Good
coming
deal.
about and stuff, so.
Mhm. Anything else for the agenda? Discussion? Mhm.
So, well, do you have her contact information
I
and
did get it from Peggy.
you got it?
Peggy
I
Callahan.
can get it if you need it.
'Cause-
Do you know it? Oh,
Typically what happens is that I try to pick out the day for a Board of Health meeting and
okay.
could,
Yeah.
work with the commissioner schedule first and then get to Peggy and then, so.
You can just
You-
email me,
you
it's
and
fine.
Peggy and I'll
Email,
go.
call, Peggy can get ahold of me, whatever.
Yeah. But as it is with now, you would pretty much expect that it would be on the Friday and
Okay.
pick a day, so. But if you're gonna be gone for a week or two sometime, we'll just, push it
Okay.
some other time, so.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Mhm.
All right, if there's nothing else, I guess I'll close the Board of Health meeting. Thank you all for coming.
If you hadn't come in.
Yeah.